Idaho and Montana, the gem state.
Here in Idaho, we have a little something called pride. Understand? Smashing in the face of a piñata that resembles summer wheat leaf is a disgrace to you, me, and the entire gem state.
And Big Sky country.
Oh, I'll never leave Montana, brother.
Two mountainous bordering states in these United States. That border is 650 miles long, and it follows the Bitterroot Range, a mountain range part of the Rocky Mountains, as well as the Continental Divide. Wait, Continental Divide? Yeah, that's the boundary that separates North America's river systems. West of it, rivers drain out west. East of it, rivers drain out east. Anyway, both states are in the northwestern part of the country. Both border Canada to the north, but Idaho barely. Apparently, its Canadian border is less than 800 football fields long. Montana, meanwhile, is the only state to border 3 Canadian provinces. It's a long border. Looking at a map, Idaho looks like a seat that Montana is sitting on, but way too big for. Both are 2 of the fastest growing states in the country, although Idaho more so. In fact, last year Idaho was the #1 fastest growing state. That said, both are sparsely populated. Montana is the 3rd least densely populated state after Wyoming and Alaska. I mean, if you see a gas station in Montana, you probably better just go ahead and fill up your tank just to be safe. And cell service can still be spotty in many isolated areas there. Both have huge, sweeping valleys with wide open spaces. Both are perfect for those who love the outdoors. Beautiful scenery, great hiking, kayaking, fishing, hunting, they've got it all, man. Both have a little slice of Yellowstone National Park that creep over the border from Wyoming. Since no one lives in the Idaho part of Yellowstone, a jury couldn't be formed from it, so due to a constitutional loophole, someone could theoretically commit a crime in that little strip of land and get away with it since it could never go to trial. Not that I'm planning anything. You don't need to worry about it. I promise. I'm not going to kill you. Anyway, Montana also has Glacier National Park, one of the most beautiful national parks in the country. Oh, and those glaciers that give the park its name will likely disappear by 2030. Both are generally fairly dry with lots of sunshine. Both have a big variety of climates, mostly due to all the mountains. Much of Idaho is what's known as a Mediterranean continental climate, or just Mediterranean climate, due to getting some influence from the Pacific Ocean. I mean, Boise doesn't actually get as cold as you'd think in the winter. Now, further east and north in Idaho, it definitely gets a lot colder. I mean, yeah, it's tundra at the top of its highest mountains. Speaking of which, the highest peak in Idaho is Bora Peak at 12,662 feet, which is not quite as tall as the highest peak in Montana, Granite Peak, which is at 12,807 feet. Both do get cold in the winter, but generally have warm summers. Montana's climate in the western part of the state is just like the climate of northern Idaho. In the valleys, much of it is continental, and then the eastern 2/3 of the state is just cold semi-arid. But it's not all flat in the east. There are all kinds of random buttes and jagged landscapes out there that are arguably as beautiful as the mountains of western Montana. Both basically have to worry about earthquakes, but they are more common and slightly more severe in Idaho. The median household income is nearly identical in both states. The poverty rate is also nearly identical. Both have low crime rates. The cost of living is similar in both states. Within each state, the cost of living can be dramatically different. For example, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho is a much more expensive city compared to Idaho Falls, Idaho, and Bozeman, Montana is a much more expensive city compared to Billings, Montana. Most of Idaho's population lives in the southern portion of the state along the Snake River. That Snake River makes up part of the border between Idaho and Oregon and Idaho and Washington. Montana's population is definitely more spread out, but most of the quote bigger cities are in the west in the mountains. Politically, voters in both states lean conservative and reliably vote for Republican Party candidates. candidates, although Montana currently does have a U.S. Senator who's a Democrat. Both states aren't that ethnically diverse. The vast majority of people in both states trace most of their ancestry back to Europe. Some argue that both states kind of have like the most neutral dialect of the entire country. Both have lots of ghost towns. What about differences? Well, the first difference is that Idaho has a much bigger wine industry. You didn't think I was gonna say that, did you? And Idahoans drink more wine per person than any other state in the country. Hey, speaking of wine, this video is sponsored by this box. This video is sponsored by Bright Cellars. Bright Cellars is a monthly wine club that ships wine directly to your house. Their passion is educating the world about wine and introducing people to new types of wines that they had never heard of and from all over the world. The best part about it is you just take a quiz online. It's a short quiz. I took one and it's not pretentious at all. You don't have to be a wine snob. It just asks you about your general tastes. And using a fancy algorithm, they determine which type of wine you would like the best. So I think I had said I like Reese's peanut butter cups. So let's see what I got here. Looks like we've got this one here, tag and title from from Austria, Obscura from California, Tripicis, Crips, I got some Crips wine, Cripsis, Voyage dans Levin, some Cabernet from France. I know.
Zinfandel.
Zinfandel. But yeah, these cards here that educate you about all of the wines, what to pair it with, what temperature it tastes best at, etc., etc. So as you can see, these wines are from all around the world and from wineries I have never heard of. Get 50% off your first 6-bottle wine experience by clicking my link on the screen right now and in the description of this video. Okay, back to more differences between Idaho and Montana. Idaho has more residents, and yes, also has one more electoral vote. But that's expected to change after the census last year, as Montana is getting back an electoral vote it lost back in 1990. Before that, both states had the same number of electoral votes since they first became states. Hey, yeah, let's go through some history, eh? Humans have lived in the area for thousands of years. At the time of European arrival, the dominant American Indian tribes in modern-day Idaho were the Shoshone and Bannock, Paiute, Nez Perce, Palouse, Coeur d'Alene, Kalispel, and Salish, and Kootenai. The dominant American Indian tribes in present-day Montana were also the Shoshone, Kalispel, and Salish, and Kootenai, but additionally the Blackfoot, Rovan, Assiniboine, Crow, Sioux, and Cheyenne. I'm sorry about all the pronunciations, I tried my best. In 1805, the Lewis and Clark expedition made their way through both modern-day Montana and Idaho on their way to the Pacific Ocean and on their way back east. After that, the first Europeans to regularly visit the area were fur traders. Europeans settled modern-day Idaho first. In 1810, Andrew Henry of the Missouri Fur Company built Fort Henry along the Snake River near modern-day St. Anthony, Idaho. Not until 31 years later did Jesuit missionaries set up St. Mary's Mission, the first permanent European settlement in Montana. Jesuits also set up missionaries in modern-day Idaho around the same time. The Oregon Trail, which ran right through modern-day Idaho, was a big reason why more and more European immigrants came out to the area after this. Mormon missionaries also established settlements in future Idaho. The railroads brought lots of settlers to both future states. Meanwhile, the U.S. federal government set up a bunch of military forts in future Montana to aid in fighting American Indian nations. Speaking of which, many of the so-called Indian Wars happened in future Montana. Most famously, the Battle of Little Bighorn, one of the few major victories for American Indians against Americans in history. Also known as Custer's Last Stand, it was, Custer's Last Stand. Idaho gets its name from an American Indian word meaning either, quote, gem of the mountains or, quote, sunrise. At least that's what people used to believe. We now know that's probably crap, and no one knows exactly where the name Idaho originated. We do know the name can be traced back to a dude named George Willing, who was certainly not a Native American, but a doctor from Philadelphia who cheated to win an election in Colorado territory. For some reason, the Idaho name stuck around about the area. Montana gets its name from the Latin word for mountain. No one also knows exactly where the name came from, but some trace it back to this guy, James Denver, a politician that the city of Denver, Colorado is named after. Both modern-day Idaho and Montana used to be part of Washington Territory, but modern-day Montana also used to be part of Dakota Territory, and parts of Idaho used to be part of Oregon Territory. However, in 1863, modern-day Montana was part of the newly created territory of Idaho. Huh? Montana used to be in Idaho? Heck yeah. But that was just a little over a year because Congress created the territory of Montana the next year. For the rest of the 1800s, tens of thousands flocked to both territories to get into farming, cattle ranching, and mining. Miners founded Helena, Montana, as a gold camp during the Montana Gold Rush. Due to that gold rush, Helena had about 50 millionaires living there by 1888. During the Gilded Age, the territory of Montana had the three industrialists known as the Copper Kings, William A. Clark, Marcus Daly, and F. Augustus Hines, who battled for control of the copper industry there. Copper made them filthy rich, but it also made the town of Butte filthy polluted. The United States admitted Montana as a state first. Okay, by just like 8 months. The movements of the Progressive Era were particularly big in both states. During the Cold War, both Idaho and Montana were victims of the effects of nuclear fallout from tests at the Nevada test site during the 1950s and 1960s. However, today, overall cancer rates in both states are lower than average than the rest of the country. Over the years, mining became less and less of a big deal in both states, while tourism became a bigger deal. Today, more Idaho residents live in cities. Montana still doesn't really have any big cities. Montana's biggest city is Billings, which has a metropolitan area population of just 172,000. Idaho's biggest city is Boise, or as the locals say, Boise, which has a metropolitan area population that's more than 4 times that of Billings. However, Montana is bigger. In fact, Montana is the 4th largest state in the country by land area. Idaho is generally warmer in the summer and Montana is generally colder in the winter. The temperature can change quickly in both, but especially in Montana. In fact, Loma, Montana holds the world record for the most extreme recorded temperature change in a 24-hour period, rising from negative 54 degrees Fahrenheit to 49 degrees Fahrenheit on January 15th, 1972. That's a swing of 103 degrees. Montana generally gets more snowfall and more precipitation overall. Much of southern Idaho is high desert and fairly flat, with mountains and wilderness generally in the north, except for the random Palouse agriculture region that sneaks into part of northwestern Idaho. Despite both having mountains, much of Montana is actually grasslands. I know it's called Montana, but look at that. Oh, and that. Oh, and that. That's all in Montana. Still, while both states have black bears, Idaho has virtually no grizzly bears. Montana has hundreds of them and the largest grizzly population in the lower 48 states. Watch out.
They are 10 feet tall with gigantic claws and 600 pounds, 42 sharp teeth.
While all of Montana and most of Idaho are in the Mountain Time Zone, part of Idaho is in the Pacific Time Zone. Montana borders 4 states, Idaho 6. Taxes are lower in Montana overall. Marijuana is legal in Montana, not in Idaho. Major industries in Idaho include food processing, lumber and wood products, electronics manufacturing, and tourism. Major industries in Montana also include tourism, but additionally agriculture, agriculture, energy, and retail. Idahoans are younger on average. I do like saying Idahoan. More Montana residents have college degrees, and it also spends more per student on education. Idaho residents are slightly more religious. The biggest religion in both is Christianity, specifically Evangelical Protestant. Idaho has a lot more public land. Idaho is the country's largest producer of potatoes, producing nearly a third of all American potatoes. Meanwhile, wheat is Montana's biggest crop. However, Idaho should also be known for its trout, and Montana also has lots of cattle ranches. Billionaire Ted Turner, who still is the second largest landowner in the country, famously owns 4 of Montana's ranches. Probably the most famous of all of Turner's ranches is the Flying D Ranch, which has around 1,800 bison. Let's see, what else? Idaho has this wonderful bed and breakfast that looks like a beagle. Montana has the country's 4th tallest statue, Our Lady of the Rockies, that overlooks Butte, and also this random cat sculpture in Missoula. Idaho has Lewiston, the farthest inland port on the west coast. Oh, you know what else is in Butte, Montana? The Berkeley Pit, a former open pit copper mine that's now just a really deep lake filled with toxic acid. Hey, you can even visit it for $3. Despite this horrific pit, it's easy to understand why so many people are moving to both Montana and Idaho. Both are beautiful places where you can really still get away from it all and have some of the largest areas of wilderness left in the contiguous United States. And yeah, I predict more and more people will discover this in the coming years. So which is better, Idaho or Montana? I especially want to hear from you if you're actually from one of these 2 states. And what did I forget to include in this video? What did I mispronounce? So fun times, 11 years ago, my brother and I were driving through Montana when our car broke down. So shout out to the very nice tow truck driver who drove us the 40 miles into Billings so that we could get a new rental car. I forgot your name, but shout out to you, man. See you later. See you next time. Bye.